Sometimes priests are asked why it's important after someone has died to have a Catholic funeral. And the answer for that has several different parts to it, if you will, because the Catholic funeral liturgy is really a set of three stations, if you will. The first part, each of these stations also have little substations in a certain sense. The first major part of the Catholic funeral liturgy is what we sometimes call the wake, otherwise called the vigil or the visitation even. Properly, it's the vigil itself, consisting of a series of scripture readings and prayers for not only the person who has died, but also for the ones who are left behind, the family and the mourners, the friends and neighbors, co-workers, for people who will miss the one who has died. This is called a vigil because it's supposed to take place not the morning of the funeral, but the evening before, so that as many people who need or want to come to express their goodbye to the one who has died, but also their comfort and their consolation and their prayers to the family, so that if they can't come for the funeral because of whatever reason, that they might have the opportunity still to express their sympathies by coming to the vigil. The second part of the Church's funeral rites is the funeral liturgy itself, which can either take place within a Mass or outside of a Mass. And there are different reasons that you might have one outside of a Mass, but usually for your average Catholic, that would happen on a day that a funeral Mass is not allowed, like, for example, on Good Friday, when no Masses are celebrated. But because the Church still has a concern for the dead, the Church can offer a funeral liturgy, which would look like the Liturgy of the Word with the funeral rites added to it, something like a funeral Mass without the Eucharistic prayer. This is an important moment in the person's faith, not only of the one who has died, but also of the family. The principal purpose of the funeral liturgy, whether it's within Mass or not, is to entrust the soul of the one who has died into the merciful hands of God. Because we know that for most of us, we don't die as a saint. We're not all like Mother Teresa or John Paul II at the moment of our death. We haven't turned away from the Lord, to be sure, but we also haven't quite fully abandoned a life of sin. We haven't fully embraced the life of Christian love that we're all called to. And so we need to be purified of that stain of sin, that attachment to sin that still remains. And the funeral liturgy is a powerful prayer that the Church can offer on our behalf. At the same time, it also does provide comfort and consolation to the family and the friends who are left behind. The third station of the Church's funeral liturgy takes place at the graveyard, at the cemetery itself, at the place of committal, and is called the commendation. It's when we entrust the mortal remains of the person into the earth, into the sea. If it's a burial at sea, that doesn't happen so much in our parts. But it's a way of recognizing what we learn in Genesis, that we are made from the dust of the earth, and unto dust we shall return. It's also a way of allowing the family to have a final goodbye, to offer final prayers, and to comfort one another. It also allows, if we're buried in a cemetery, it allows them a place to come back to from time to time in the future, where they might come for consolation, where they might come to talk to the person who has died, where they might come to pray for the one who has died, and to ensure that the place where the one who is buried is a dignified place until Jesus comes back in his glory. All three of these aspects of the Church's funeral liturgy are meant to be done in harmony with each other. It can sometimes happen that for an extreme reason, that one or two of them might be omitted and only one of them be done, or just two of them. But the Church's mindset, the Church's desire, is that all three of these be done for every person who has died, to whatever extent is possible, so that as many prayers can be prayed as can be done, and so that as much prayer and sympathy for the family can be extended to them.